Welcome to this video of getting started with Rhino.Inside.Revit. This is a very simple video intended to help install, learn how to load it, and learn some workflows to just get you started. And so let's start with the website. This is the Rhino.Inside website, as you can see here. So I'm on the Getting Started article here. You need three things to get Rhino.Inside.Revit to run. You need Revit 2018, 19, 20, or 21. Then you need Rhino 7. You can use the Rhino 7 commercial version, educational version, or you can download the Rhino 7 evaluation, which will run for 90 days. And so once you have Revit, you have Rhino 7 installed, then what you need to do is download and install Rhino.Inside.Revit here. This is the application that will tie those two together and create the link between the two. So once you have those three installed, what you can do is start Revit. And the first time you start Revit, it will ask you, would you like to load Rhino.Inside.Revit? You say yes. And what that does is on the add-ins toolbar here for Revit, you'll get a Rhino button. And in this configuration, it's not using a Rhino license or a Grasshopper license. It's just ready. And when you're ready to use Rhino and Grasshopper inside Revit, simply you press on this. And what that will do is it will attempt to load Grasshopper and Rhino into Revit, into its memory space. And if it's successful, it'll create this toolbar. This is where you can control how Rhino and Grasshopper run in Revit. In this case, we're just going to do something very simple. I've got a model with a single simple wall in it. And so I'm going to start Rhino. So I'll press on this button here. And this starts Rhino 7 inside Revit. And it's standard Rhino. You've got all your, your open, your news, you can save. I'll double click on here to get the perspective. So it is standard Rhino. Just happens to be running inside Revit. Now, when we hit start Grasshopper, so I'll just go over here to launch Grasshopper. And when we start Grasshopper, Grasshopper is a little different. Grasshopper knows that it's running in a Rhino that's running in Revit. And so it has a few extra toolbars. One toolbar on the params section here are parameters and primitives that are Revit aware. So we have grids, we have levels, we have graphic elements, which we'll use a lot, ceilings, categories, families. So just lots of different param components here. These are used mainly to select objects in Revit. Now, it also will add a Revit toolbar right here. And these are where all the Revit-aware components are in Grasshopper. And so we have add beams, columns, floors. We can interrogate categories. We can deal with direct shapes. We can look, interrogate, and analyze the document. We can look at, we can work with specific elements in Revit. These are used quite a bit. So you want to get used to this part of the toolbar. We can create new families, load families, create families, all those kinds of things. Input here is to select content out of Revit that Grasshopper can work on. We can deal with materials in Revit, create them, analyze them, edit them. If I go through here, we have types, so we can deal with types. And at the end here, we have walls. Walls are very special. So in this case, walls have their own group, and we can deal with stacked walls, curtain walls, basic walls, all those things. So the first thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to create a definition that grabs a wall out of Revit and then generates it or extracts its geometry into Rhino. So the first thing I'm going to do is go over to parameters here, go to graphic element. I'll drop that there. And just like any picker in Grasshopper for Rhino, for Revit, you just right click on here, say set one graphic element. Now I can select that object in Revit. And there we go. So now that's just the Revit element. One thing that I want to do, I'll come over here, I'll go to element. I want to extract its geometry. So I go to element geometry, put that right here. I can wire that Revit element into the extract geometry component, and you'll see what I get in Rhino is the geometry of the wall, based on this extraction. If I want to bake this in Rhino, I can of course right-click on this and say bake. But that's how simple it is to grab geometry out of Revit and then bring it into Rhino. All right. And so that's one direction. Now I'm going to go the other direction, which is what I want to do is I want to take a line and I want to generate a wall from that in Revit. So I'll take a Rhino line and we'll generate a wall in Revit. So I'm going to jump to this other definition here, which is blank. So the way we're going to start this is I'll start with the line. So I'm going to go to params and I'll grab a line component, standard everyday Grasshopper line component. Right click on it and say set one line. I'll pick 2 points here. And now I have a line Grasshopper that's dynamic. And we'll come over here. Now when creating objects in Revit, there's a whole BIM schema that has to be wrapped around those objects. So if we come over here to wall, I'll say add wall by curve. We'll put that right there, and you can see I have a number of things I need to fill out that I have control over. So I'm going to grab the line and I throw it in curve here. So if I look here, you can see that there's a new wall created that is created in Revit, but it also previews in Rhino. So that's just a generic wall. If we want control over the type of wall, then there's a number of things that we would normally do. So one very common way of doing this is I'm going to go to input. I'm going to say model category picker. Okay, so that gives me a list of all the categories in Revit. And I'm just going to scroll down here to walls, because that's the category I want to find all the types, all the wall types in the current model. So we did walls here. The next thing I'm going to do is go to type and say query type. I'm going to grab the outputs from here, throw it in category, and what I get is a list of all the wall types in the drawing or in the Revit model. Now I need to pick one of those so I can push it into the wall here that I'm going to generate. So I'm going to go over here. There's a nice picker, nice list picker right here. And let's do that. And you can see what I get is a list of all the wall types that are currently in the drawing. In this case, I'm just going to pick one. Then I get the output and I throw it in type. And what I get is that type wall in Revit. If I want to, really kind of show off here, I'll come in here and do a 8-inch masonry wall, and you can see that wall now generated from the line in Rhino has generated a wall in Revit. Grasshopper is still in control, so I can also do things like control its height. So I'll come in here, type in to create a slider, a standard Grasshopper height slider. I'll grab this here, throw it in there, and now you can see what will happen is as I move that slider back and forth, the height of the wall changes in Revit. And I guess to show this, it's also regenerating the preview in Grasshopper. Okay. So this is just a quick overview of how to install Rhino inside Revit, how to get it started, and how to get geometry from Revit into Rhino, and how to get geometry from Rhino or create objects using Rhino objects to drive objects in Revit. To go further, what I'd recommend is to get back to our website here, go through the guides, go through Discover, go through the community videos. There's lots of information here to allow you to understand more about how to move forward with Rhino inside Revit. I hope this is helpful. Thank you.